and welcome back to our series on Leading with Impact. I'm your host, Samantha Brighton. Today, I'm joined by former Director of Technology at Boeing, author and professor, Dr. Albert Erisman. Al is an avid reader and a lifelong learner who encourages others to do the same. Thank you so much for joining us today, Al.
Hi, Sam. Nice to meet you.
You've spent 30 years with a corporation that has a long tenure and a big corporate structure. And so my question to you is, how did you live an integrated life in such a corporate setting?
Well, the easy answer is I probably didn't. I tried, but what I've learned is that living an integrated life is always a journey, and you fall off one side and you pick it up and you go on with the other. But there are a lot of tensions pulling at you in leadership. And then there's, of course, your family, your community life, and all of the other things. And living an integrated life becomes a goal. Some people talk about work-life balance, and I don't use that term. First of all, work is a part of life, and so the idea of work-life balance makes no sense. But secondly, it's always going to be difficult to navigate the pressures and tensions on both sides. So I like to talk about it as whole life integration, and it's what I believe in very strongly and what I continue to struggle to do.
Absolutely. So you are very passionate about people and even companies having a purpose over profit. And so my question is was that something you were able to do in your long tenured career?
I think it was a constant message that I tried to convey within the corporation to say it's not just about profit, and trying to remember what it's for. So a simple example, when we would bring new people into the organization, one of our thoughts was, how do we get them out to the assembly line to see the airplanes being built and to recognize that what we are doing is bringing people into a relationship that allows us to build these great airplanes, and their purpose is to bring people together. And yes, we have to make money along the way in order to do this, because you don't exist as a business without that. But if you don't have a bigger purpose, it will be a problem for you. So the reminder over and over again of what it is we're trying to do became really an important theme.
Everybody has a part to play. And I think when we equip everybody to know that no matter what size the piece of the puzzle, it's an important part.
Yes, and that points to another job of a leader, is to help people in the organization who may not see how their part relates to a whole, to help them see that. And I think leaders that do that don't just start with their agenda, but they think of whole people and helping them see their contribution to the bigger picture. I just think that's an important role for any leader.
So when we're talking about the pandemic and all the things that have been learned and need to be learned through this global experience, what advice do you have to give people some autonomy and some tools to maybe have an impact on changing the way things move forward?
One of the things that I think people want to do during this time is they want to lament what they lost. And I think that's a good practice for a short time. You need to say, okay, my life was this way, now it's this way. But then it's time to pick up the ball and say, what have I learned through this that will make a difference going forward? One example is the term essential workers has come out of the pandemic. All along the way, we should have recognized every person in the organization as being valuable. But this sent a spotlight on that concept of essential worker. Why don't we carry that forward and not say, I want to go back to normal, but I want to have learned from this. Here's another example that's much simpler. We have learned how to use Zoom. Now, Zoom is not the answer for communication. We need face-to-face communication. But there are some things that these tools can do that we couldn't do otherwise. We have a gathering here of people from different parts of the country to have this conversation. That would be very expensive and time-consuming otherwise. How do we learn and carry forward how to use these tools effectively in the context of post-COVID business? And how can this make us better going forward? And so I think that there are a whole array of things that we should be learning. And my goal for any leader would be to say, don't wish to go back to normal.
That's great advice. You spoke about maybe not being able to have as much impact as you desired on the way in which business was done. What advice do you have for those young leaders who are very ambitious that want to enter corporate worlds that maybe aren't as open to that kind of change?
Right. So I had the opportunity a few years ago of interviewing a business leader, or a government leader actually. And I said to him, how does a young person give you ideas, challenge your thinking? And he made this comment, which I've pondered ever since. He said, I advise younger people to ask questions because when you ask a question, it causes the leader to say, maybe I didn't think of that. Or maybe say, your idea sounds really good, but it doesn't happen because of this and this. And so it leads to another conversation. And then secondly, he said this, always tell the truth as you know it, and always know that you don't know all of the truth. And in doing so, I think it can create change and you can have an influence. But at the same time, it won't happen as fast as you want it to. There may be good reasons for that. I just encourage you to keep at it.
Did you ever find that you lost hope or maybe some of that enthusiasm in your journey and in your career? If you did, how did you get yourself back on course?
Yes, of course I did. There were days that were discouraging, that were frustrating. I think the adjustment for me, I'm a person of faith. I began to see that the work that I did was not just about me, but it had a bigger purpose. I think those days, though, were also a time of reflection. And I'm not sure I always did this right to say, how did I mess up? Because maybe I didn't communicate this very well. Maybe I made it about me and not about this bigger purpose. I think every one of us, if we're honest, find that we fall into this trap of making it about me. And so there needed to be some reminder that it isn't just them that are wrong. There are no perfect people, and it starts with me. Having that time to reflect on that point of view was important in making sure that the next attempt wasn't so much about me and readjusted to purpose and meaning. One of the books that I wrote was about a biblical character named Joseph. He had dreams of being a great leader. He irritated people with the way he expressed his view about what a great leader he would be. He was sold into slavery by his brothers who despised him. He spent 13 years in slavery and in prison. But during that time, what I noticed about him was that he reoriented his thinking. When he had an opportunity later, he is thinking about purpose and the impact of his work on others and not about himself. And that was a transformation. And sometimes we need this period of time where we are defeated and discouraged as a reminder that how can I do things differently? And for me, my faith has been helpful in that part of the journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You have retired and you are in a different chapter of your life. What advice would you give to others who are in the same chapter of life as you?
So I think the first thing is to define retirement. I define retirement as new tires for the next leg of the journey.
Yes.
So it may be carried out in a different context, but if it isn't still about purpose and meaning and value and direction, then I think it would be dreary indeed. My wife likes to say I flunked retirement multiple times because when I left the Boeing company in 2001, I thought I would teach a bit at a university. And so I ended up teaching for 17 years. When I stepped away from teaching, I had a research project that I was undertaking, and I didn't feel like I had the time to grade papers any longer. So I have taken on that. Purpose and meaning remains the driver. So I would hope that retirement didn't become about me, but it comes about, well, what have I learned that I can share with others? How can I encourage others along the way? So I have a lot of mentoring relationships with younger people. I don't define mentoring in the usual way because I don't think it's about me giving my insight to them. I think it's about learning together. And what I find is the insight that I get from so many of the young people I'm engaged with is incredibly important to me in understanding a world that is changing very rapidly. I find these relationships life-giving and important and helpful. So I would say to anyone in retirement or even in senior leadership, you have a lot to learn. We all do. I hope you're engaging life with a new sense of purpose and meaning that represents this stage of your life. So that's what I've learned. I don't know that it applies to everyone, but that's the way I think about it.
I think that's fantastic advice for everybody, not just people in retirement. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with us. I know we're on a Zoom call, but your energy is just beautiful. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be with you.
For everyone watching today, I have a question for you. Have you had a dramatic defeat? Have you taken that opportunity to shift your perspective and turn it into something positive? If so, we want to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to follow our Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified about everything Leader Impact. Thanks for joining us and see you next time.